At precisely 2:43 a.m. on May 24, 2025, the silence over Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia Oblast was shattered, not by artillery, not by jets screaming overhead, but by something far more insidious: the near-silent whirring of electric motors slicing through the cold night air. High above the steppe, cloaked in shadows and silence, 3 Ukrainian FPV attack drones, matte black, razor-precise, and deathly quiet, skimmed low across open fields and fractured rail lines. They were not detected by radar. No spotlights caught their wings. There was no warning siren, no scramble of anti-air crews. Only the faint, almost insect-like hum as they glided toward their mark. Their target? A Russian military fuel train. 8 tanker cars linked like steel coffins. 560 tons of volatile diesel, the lifeblood of armored divisions and artillery columns. Enough fuel to keep 2 battalion tactical groups moving, firing and killing for a week. But tonight, that fuel wasn't destined for engines. It was destined for fire. They never saw it coming. This wasn't some reckless drone op stitched together by amateurs. This was a deliberate surgical ambush, the product of weeks of surveillance, engineering, and cold calculation. Buried 30 kilometers away, beneath layers of concrete and camouflage netting, a Ukrainian drone warfare team sat sealed inside a fortified underground command post, monitoring the world through heat signatures and digital overlays. They had 5 drones in play, each with a role, each calibrated to the mission like a cog in a well-oiled machine. A high-altitude DJI Mavic 3 reconnaissance drone, flying steady at 400 meters with thermal optics, and a zoom lens capable of reading license plates from 8 kilometers away. 3 custom Ukrainian FPV quadcopters, bristling with power, and payloads designed for one purpose: destruction, and a reserve Mavic drone on standby, pre-programmed to swap in instantly if the lead recon bird was blinded or jammed. But these weren't store-bought drones anymore. The Recon Mavic had been re-engineered by Ukrainian tech crews, its firmware jailbroken and its hardware rebuilt. Its digital zoom was overclocked to a staggering 56x, while a FLIR boson thermal core, salvaged from downed Western equipment, gave it the ability to track a diesel engine's warmth through fog, darkness, and foliage. The FPV attackers were even more lethal. Each was a beast in miniature, built around 7-inch tri-blade propellers, powered by high-torque 2807 class brushless motors, and stabilized by F7 flight controllers running custom firmware written in war zones, not labs. Beneath each drone hung a 2.6-kilogram explosively formed penetrator, shaped and channeled to slice through steel like paper. These weren't hobby drones. They were low-altitude, precision-guided munitions with cameras. Inside the dimly lit command post, screens flickered with night vision and thermal feeds. Operators, many of them in their early 20s, sat in front of banks of monitors, joysticks in hand, voices low, movements precise. Cigarette smoke curled through the recycled air as a senior commander stood behind them, arms folded, eyes locked on the incoming telemetry. Then, a heat bloom, subtle but unmistakable, bloomed onto the recon drone's thermal feed. It cut across the black and white landscape like a comet. "Target confirmed," came the quiet call. A diesel locomotive, its engine block glowing like a miniature sun in the darkness, hauling 7 tankers across the open terrain, precisely where Ukrainian intelligence said it would be. That intel hadn't come easy. For 3 consecutive days, teams inside the main intelligence directorate, HUR, worked hand-in-hand with civilian partisans embedded in the occupied zone. These locals, risking torture and death, used burner phones to log the train's refueling points, departure times, and even intercepted radio chatter. Satellite passes from NATO-aligned assets confirmed the patterns. Ukrainian planners had identified a narrow 15-minute window, a blind spot in Russian electronic warfare coverage. The kill box was live. The ambush began. At 2:44 a.m., the first FPV drone was launched. A crew member toggled his goggles down. The world around him vanished, replaced by a first-person view, a ghostly feed from the nose-mounted camera of the drone, now streaking toward the train. The drone banked low, dipping below tree line. GPS gave way to optical tracking, the onboard system switching to close-range targeting. But the battlefield blinked and changed. A Russian Lear 3EW truck, stationed kilometers away, had suddenly activated. Its twin antennas spun to life, emitting wideband jamming meant to blind and disrupt Ukrainian UAVs. The airwaves filled with static and chaos. A cheap drone would have dropped like a rock, but these weren't cheap. The Recon Mavic automatically switched to a secondary encrypted frequency. The FPV drone's systems kicked into frequency-hopping, spread-spectrum mode, dancing between bands dozens of times per second. With GPS scrambled, the drone's inertial navigation took over, relying on accelerometers and gyroscopes to guide it in. The operator's voice was calm. Autonomous mode. Engage. The drone's flight computer took control. The camera tracked the glowing cylinder of the third tanker car, exactly as briefed. Using onboard image recognition, it adjusted pitch and yaw to align with the flank of the moving fuel container. A split second of silence. Then, detonation. A shaped charge detonated with bone-snapping violence. A molten jet of copper plasma sliced into the steel tanker wall, reaching temperatures hot enough to vaporize human flesh and ignite the diesel within. The resulting explosion wasn't a bang, it was a roar, a rolling thunderclap that lit up the countryside like sunrise. Fireball, shockwave, then silence, quickly replaced by the shriek of flames. The adjacent tanker cars, connected by ventilation piping, began to burn. Internal pressure ruptured seals. A second blast followed, then a third. Above, the recon drone caught every moment. The concentric wave of heat, the rolling dome of flame, the scatter of glowing debris. Operators in the bunker shielded their eyes from the sudden glare on their screens. But they weren't finished. 2:46 a.m. The second drone was already in the air. Smoke now covered the target area, making visibility difficult, but not impossible. Using thermal guidance, the drone crept low under the haze, seeking out the sixth tanker car, which had not yet ignited. With barely a whisper, the drone knifed upward and struck the cooler flank of the tanker. Another shaped charge. Another explosion. This one smaller, more controlled, but devastating all the same. 69 tons of diesel vanished into flame. A minute later, the third FPV drone flew in from a different axis, west to east, avoiding the plume and exploiting a gap in Russian line-of-sight sensors. It dove for the eighth and final tanker, skimming low across scorched ballast. Impact. The last car exploded, its fuel vaporizing in a jet of fire that arced 30 meters into the sky. By 2:49 a.m., the strike team was powering down. The train was gone. 8 tankers, 560 tons of fuel, were consumed. The inferno rose so high it warped local weather conditions. The steel rails had buckled and twisted. Concrete railway ties melted into bubbling slag. The entire stretch of track had become unusable. And the whole thing, from first liftoff to final blast, had cost Ukraine less than $50,000 in drone hardware. And every second of it was recorded in full-resolution 4K, live-streamed back to the command node over a civilian mobile signal boosted with field-made antenna arrays. Even the control software had been built, using open-source tools. Battlefield ingenuity at its peak. This was no one-off mission. It was a blueprint, a new kind of war, low-cost, high-impact, tech-driven, and deeply asymmetric. And to the Russian generals reviewing the wreckage the next morning, only one truth remained. No supply line is safe. No train is hidden. No armor is invincible. Welcome to the new era of war.